Adapted from archaic translation by W. H. D. Rouse. Jataka number 254. Kuṇḍaka-Kucchi-Sindhava-Jātaka. Grass and the scum of porridge, etc. This story the master told at Jetavana monastery about the elder monk Sariputra. It once fell out that the Buddha had been spending the rainy season in Shravasti city, and afterwards had been on alms pilgrimage. On his return, the inhabitants determined to welcome his homecoming, and they made their gifts to the Buddha and his following. They placed the clerk who used to sound the call for preaching, to distribute the brethren amongst all comers, according to the number they wished to provide for. There was one poor old woman, who had prepared one portion. The brethren were assigned, some to this giver, some to that. At sunrise, the poor woman came to the clerk, and said, "Give a brother to me." He answered, "I have already distributed him all. But elder monk Sariputra is still in the monastery, and you may give your portion to him." At this she was delighted, and waited by the gate of Jetavana monastery until the elder monk came out. She gave him greeting, took his bowl from his hand, and leading him to her house, offered him a seat. Many pious families heard a rumor that some old woman had got Sariputra to sit down at her door. Amongst those who heard it was King Pasenadi the Kosala. He had once sent her food of all sorts, together with a garment and a purse of 1,000 pieces, with the request, "Let her who is entertaining the elder monk put on this robe, and spend this money, and thus entertain the elder monk." As the king did, so did Anatha Pindika, the younger Anatha Pindika, the lay sister Visakha, all sent the same. Other families sent 100, 200 or so, as their means allowed. Thus in a single day the old woman got as much as 100,000 pieces of money. Our monk drank the broth which she gave him, and ate her food, and the rice that she cooked. Then he thanked her, and so taught path to her that she was converted. Then he returned to the monastery. In the Hall of Truth, the brethren discussed the elder monk's goodness. "Friend, the captain of the faith has rescued an old housewife from poverty. He has been her mainstay. The food she offered he did not refuse to eat." The master entered, and asked what they were talking of now as they sat together. They told him. And he said, "This is not the first time, brethren, that Sariputra has been the refuge of this old woman. Nor the first time he did not refuse to eat the food she offered. He did the same before." And he told an old world tale. It happened once upon a time, when Brahmadatta was king of Benares, that the Bodhisattva was born into a trader's family in the northern province. 500 people of that country, horse dealers, used to convey horses to Benares, and sell them there. Now a certain dealer took the road to Benares with 500 horses for sale. On this road, not far off Benares, there is a town, where had formerly lived a rich merchant. A vast living once was his. But his family had gradually gone down in the world, and only one old woman was left, who lived in the family house. The dealer took up his lodging for a certain hire in that house, and kept his horses hard by. On that very day, as luck would have it, a thoroughbred mare of his gave birth. He waited 2 or 3 days, and then taking his horses with him went off to visit the king. Because of that the old woman asked him for the hire of the house. "All right, mother, I'll pay you," said he. "When you pay me, my son," she said then, "give me this young animal, and deduct its value from the hire." The dealer did as she asked and went his way. The woman loved the young animal like a son. And she fed him upon parched rice drippings, on broken meats, and grass. Some time after, the Bodhisattva, on his way with 500 horses, took lodging in this house. But the horses scented this high-bred young animal, that fed on red rice powder, and not one of them would enter the place. Then said the Bodhisattva to the lady, "There seems to be some horse in the place, mother." "Oh, my son, the only horse there is a young animal which I keep here as tenderly as it were my son." "Where is he, mother?" "Gone out to graze." "When will he return?" "Oh, he'll soon come back." The Bodhisattva kept the horses without, and sat down to wait until the young animal should come in. And soon the young animal returned from his walk. When he set eyes on the fine young animal with his belly full of rice powder, the Bodhisattva noted his signs, and thought this is a priceless thoroughbred. I must buy him of the old woman. By this time the young animal had entered the house and gone to his own stable. At once all the horses were able to go in too. There dwelling the Bodhisattva for a few days, and attended to his horses. Then as he made to go, "Mother," said he to the old woman, "let me buy this young animal of you." "What are you saying? One mustn't sell one's own raised child. What do you give him to eat, mother?" "Rice boiled, and rice porridge, and parched rice. Broken meats and grass. And rice broth to drink." "Well, mother, if I get him, I'll feed him on the choicest of food. When he stands, he shall have a cloth awning spread over him. I will give him a carpet to stand on. Will you, my son? Then take this child of mine, and go, and may he be happy." And the Bodhisattva paid a separate price for the young animal's 4 feet, for his tail and for his head. 6 purses of 1,000 pieces of money he laid down, 1 for each. And he caused the lady to robe herself in a new dress, and decorated her with ornaments, and set her in front of the young animal. And the young animal opened his eyes, and looked upon his mother, and shed tears. She stroked his back, and said, "I have received the compensation for what I have done for you. Go, my son." And then he departed. Next day the Bodhisattva thought he would make trial of the young animal, whether he knew his own power or no. So after preparing common food, he caused red rice porridge to be poured out, presented to him in a bucket. But this he could not swallow, and refused to touch any such food. Then the Bodhisattva, to test him, uttered the first verse. "Grass and the scum of porridge you thought good in former times. Why don't you eat your food?" On hearing which, the young animal answered with the 2 other couplets following. "When people do not know one's birth and breed, rice scum is good enough to serve one's need. But I am chief of horses, as you are aware. Therefore from you I will not take this food." Then answered the Bodhisattva, "I did this to try you. Do not be angry." And he cooked the fine food and offered it to him. When he came to the king's courtyard, he set the 500 horses on one side, and on the other an embroidered awning, under which he laid a carpet, with a canopy of stuff over it. And here he lodged the young animal. The king, coming to inspect the horses, asked why this horse was housed apart. "O king," was the reply, "if this horse be not kept apart, he will let loose these others." "Is he a beautiful horse?" the king asked. "Yes, O king." "Then let me see his paces." The owner saddle-clothed him, and mounted on his back. Then he cleared the courtyard of men, and rode the horse about in it. The whole place appeared to be encircled with lines of horses, without a break. Then said the Bodhisattva, "See my horse's speed, O king, and let him have his head." Not a man could see him at all. Then he fastened a red leaf upon the horse's flank, and they saw just the leaf. And then he rode him over the surface of a pond in a certain garden of the city. Over he went, and not even the tips of his hoofs were wet. Again, He galloped over lotus leaves, without even pushing one of them under water. When his master had thus showed off the horse's magnificent paces, he dismounted, clapped his hands, and held out one palm upwards. The horse got upon it, and stood on the palm of his master's hand, with his 4 feet close together. And the Bodhisattva said, "O mighty king! Not even the whole circle of the ocean would be space enough for this horse to show off all his skill." The king was so pleased that he gave him the half of his kingdom. The horse he installed as his horse of state, sprinkling him with ceremonial water. Dear was he and precious to the king, and great honor was done him. And his living place was made like the chamber where the king lived, all beautiful. The floor was sprinkled with all the 4 manners of perfumes, the walls were hung with wreaths of flowers and frequent garlands. Up in the roof was an awning of cloth covered with golden stars. It was all like a lovely pavilion round about. A lamp of scented oil burnt always. And in the retiring chamber was set a golden jar. His food was always fit for a king. And after he came there, the lordship over all India came into this king's hand. And the king did good deeds and almsgiving according to the Bodhisattva's advice, and became destined for paradise. When the master had ended this discourse, he explained the truths, and identified the birth, or the second, or the third. Closing parenthesis. At that time the old woman was the same, Sariputra was the thoroughbred, Ananda was the king, and the horse-dealer was I myself. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by W. H. D. Rouse. Jataka number 255. Suka-Jātaka. What time the bird, etc. This story the master told while living at Jetavana monastery, about a brother who died of overeating. On his death, the brethren assembled in the Hall of Truth, and discussed his demerits on this fashion. Friend, brother so-and-so was ignorant how much he could safely eat. So he ate more than he could digest, and died in consequence. The master entered, and asked what they talked of now as they sat together. And they told him. Brethren, he said, this is not the first time our friend died of overeating. The same has happened before. Then he told them an old world tale. Once upon a time, when King Brahmadatta reigned over Benares, the Bodhisattva became a parrot, and lived in the Himalaya region. He was king over several thousands of his kind, who lived on the seaward side of the Himalayas. And one son was his. When his son grew up to be strong, the father parrot's eyes became weak. The truth is, that parrots fly with great swiftness. For which reason when they be old it is the eye that weakens first. His son kept his parents in the nest, and would bring them food to feed them. It happened one day that our young parrot went to the place where he found his food, and descended upon a mountain top. From there he looked over the ocean, and saw an island, in which was a mango grove full of sweet golden fruit. So next day, at the time of the fetching of food, he rose in the air and flew to this grove of mangoes, where he sucked the mango juice, and took of the fruit, and took it home to his mother and father. As the Bodhisattva ate of it, he knew the taste. My son, said he, this is a mango of such and such an island, naming it. Even so, father, replied the young parrot. Parrots that go there, my son, have not length of life, he said. Go not to that island again. But the son obeyed him not, and went yet again. Then one day it happened that he went as usual, and drank much of the mango juice. With a mango in his beak he was passing over the ocean, when he grew worn out with so long carrying, and sleep mastered him. Sleeping he flew on, and the fruit which he carried fell from out of his beak. And by degrees he left his path, and sinking down skimmed the surface of the water, till in the end he fell in. And then a fish caught and devoured him. When he should have returned, he returned not, and the Bodhisattva knew that he must have fallen into the water. Then his parents, receiving no sustenance, sorrowful declined away and died. The Master, having told this tale, in his perfect wisdom, uttered the following stanzas. What time the bird without excess did eat, he found the way, and brought his mother meat. But once he ate too much, forgot the mean, he fell, and afterward was no more seen. So be not greedy, modest be in all. To spare is safe. Greed goes before a fall. When the Master had ended this discourse, he explained the truths, or the second, or third, or fourth, and identified the birth. At that time, the brother who has overeaten was the young parrot, and the king of the parrots was I myself. Footnotes. The scholar adds the following lines. Be moderate in eating wet or dry, and this your hunger's need will satisfy. Who eats with care, whose belly is not great, will be a holy hermit soon or late. 4 or 5 mouthfuls, then a drink is right. Enough for any earnest hermit. A careful moderate eater has small pain, slowly grows old, lives twice as long again. And these, when sons bring meat to fathers in the wood, like ointment to the eye, it is very good. Thus for bare life, with weariness forspent, he nourished him upon such nourishment.